Some change the way we work, a few change the way we live, but very few change the world itself. From a Harvard dropout to the visionary behind Microsoft, he turned technology into a tool for humanity. Please welcome Bill Gates, a pioneer, philanthropist and global changemaker.
My name is Bill Gates, and today I want to share with you the story of my journey from a curious kid in Seattle to building one of the most influential companies in history and ultimately dedicating my life to solving the world's most pressing problems. This isn't just a story about technology or business success. It's about the power of curiosity, the importance of taking risks, and the responsibility that comes with extraordinary fortune. I was born on October 28, 1955, in Seattle, Washington, to William H. Gates Sr. and Mary Maxwell Gates. My family was well educated and successful, but not wealthy in the way people might imagine. My father was a prominent lawyer, and my mother served on corporate boards and was involved in charitable work. From the very beginning, I was surrounded by people who valued education, hard work, and giving back to the community. As a child, I was intensely curious about everything around me. I read voraciously, often spending entire days lost in encyclopedias and books about science, history, and technology. My parents encouraged this intellectual hunger, even when my interests led me down unconventional paths. They understood that true learning comes from following your passions, not from forcing yourself into predetermined molds. My early years were marked by an insatiable desire to understand how things worked. I would take apart radios, clocks, and any electronic device I could get my hands on, much to my parents' occasional frustration. But this wasn't mindless destruction, it was systematic exploration. I needed to understand the principles behind the technologies that were becoming increasingly important in our daily lives. School came relatively easily to me, but I was often bored by the pace and the conventional teaching methods. I was the kind of student who would finish assignments quickly and then seek out additional challenges. This sometimes made me difficult to manage in traditional classroom settings, but it also revealed a pattern that would define my entire life: the need to constantly push boundaries and explore new possibilities. When I was 13, my life changed forever. Lakeside School, the private preparatory school I attended, acquired a computer terminal connected to a mainframe computer. This was 1968, when computers were massive, expensive machines that only large corporations and universities could afford. Most people had never seen a computer, let alone used one. But Lakeside had the vision to invest in this emerging technology, recognizing its potential educational value. The moment I sat down at that terminal and typed my first program, I knew I had found my calling. There was something magical about being able to give instructions to a machine and have it execute those commands precisely. The immediate feedback, the logical structure, the infinite possibilities for creativity and problem solving, everything about programming captivated me completely. I spent countless hours at that computer terminal, often staying late after school and arriving early in the morning. While other kids were playing sports or socializing, I was learning programming languages, writing code, and exploring the vast potential of these incredible machines. My parents were initially concerned about my obsession, wondering if this fascination with computers might be limiting my social development or academic breadth. But what they didn't realize was that I was getting an education that no traditional classroom could provide. I was learning not just technical skills, but problem-solving methodologies, logical thinking patterns, and the discipline required to tackle complex challenges. More importantly, I was developing a vision of how computers could transform every aspect of human life. At Lakeside, I met Paul Allen, who shared my passion for computers and programming. Paul was 2 years older than me, but we connected immediately over our shared fascination with this emerging technology. Together, we would spend hours discussing the potential applications of computers, imagining scenarios where these machines could solve real-world problems and improve people's lives. Our partnership began with small projects and experiments, but it quickly evolved into something more ambitious. We started a small business called Trafo Data, which used computers to analyze traffic patterns for local municipalities. This wasn't just a student project. It was a real business that provided valuable services to paying customers. More importantly, it gave us practical experience in translating technical capabilities into market solutions. The experience with Trafo Data taught me several crucial lessons that would guide my entire career. First, I learned that technical excellence alone isn't enough. You need to understand customer needs and market dynamics to create successful solutions. Second, I discovered the importance of partnerships and collaboration in tackling complex challenges. And third, I realized that the computer industry was on the verge of explosive growth that would create unprecedented opportunities for those prepared to seize them. During my high school years, I also had the opportunity to work as a programmer for Computer Center Corporation, a local company that provided computer time-sharing services. This job exposed me to the commercial side of the computer industry and gave me insights into how businesses were beginning to use computers for practical applications beyond research and scientific calculations. Working at Computer Center Corporation also introduced me to the broader community of programmers and computer enthusiasts in the Seattle area. I learned from experienced professionals who had been working with computers since their earliest commercial applications. These mentors helped me understand not just technical concepts, but also the business principles and market forces that would shape the industry's development. By the time I was ready to graduate from high school, I had a clear vision of my future. While my parents hoped I would pursue a traditional path through college and perhaps follow my father into law, I was already dreaming of starting a computer company that would put personal computers in every home and office. This vision seemed impossibly ambitious at the time, but I was convinced that the rapid advancement of computer technology would make it achievable within a few decades. The decision to attend Harvard University was partly a compromise with my parents, who valued education and wanted me to have a solid academic foundation before pursuing my entrepreneurial ambitions. I enrolled in Harvard in 1973, ostensibly to study mathematics and computer science, but in reality, I was using the university's resources to continue my exploration of computer programming and software development. Harvard provided me with access to more powerful computers and a community of brilliant students and professors who challenged my thinking in new ways. But I was increasingly restless with the academic environment, which seemed disconnected from the rapid changes happening in the real world of computing. While professors discussed theoretical concepts, I could see practical applications that needed immediate attention. During my sophomore year at Harvard, I saw an article in Popular Electronics magazine about the Altair 8800, a build-it-yourself computer kit that was being marketed to electronics enthusiasts. This wasn't just another technical curiosity, it was the first commercially available personal computer that individuals could actually afford and use. The moment I saw that article, I knew that the computer revolution I had been anticipating was beginning. Paul Allen, who had moved to Boston to work for Honeywell, rushed to show me the article. We both recognized immediately that this was the opportunity we had been waiting for. The Altair had the hardware capabilities, but it lacked the software that would make it useful for ordinary people. Someone needed to create programming languages, applications and operating systems that would unlock the potential of these personal computers. We contacted MITS, the company that manufactured the Altair, and told them we had developed a version of the basic programming language that would run on their machine. This was somewhat optimistic, since we hadn't actually written the software yet, but we were confident in our ability to deliver what we promised. We had 8 weeks to create a working basic interpreter, test it thoroughly, and prepare it for commercial release. Those 8 weeks were among the most intense and exciting of my life. Paul and I worked around the clock, writing code, debugging programs, and testing our software on Harvard's computers, since we didn't actually have access to an Altair machine. We were essentially creating software for a computer we had never seen, relying on technical specifications and our understanding of computer architecture to guide our development process. The pressure was enormous, because we knew this was our chance to establish ourselves in the emerging personal computer industry. If our basic interpreter worked correctly, we could become software providers for what we believed would be a rapidly growing market. If it failed, we might miss the opportunity to participate in the computer revolution we had been anticipating for years. When we finally had a working version of our basic interpreter, Paul flew to Albuquerque, New Mexico, to demonstrate it to the team at MITS. I stayed at Harvard, nervously waiting for news about whether our months of work had produced a viable product. The phone call telling me that our software had worked perfectly was one of the most exciting moments of my young life. Our success with BASIC for the Altair proved that there was indeed a market for personal computer software, and that a small dedicated team could create products that competed effectively with much larger companies. More importantly, it validated our vision that the personal computer industry would create enormous opportunities for software developers who could anticipate user needs and deliver reliable, useful applications. The positive response to our basic interpreter convinced me that it was time to make a decision about my future. I could continue at Harvard, complete my degree, and perhaps pursue graduate studies in computer science or mathematics. Or I could leave university and commit myself fully to building a software company that would help define the personal computer revolution. This decision would define the rest of my life, and I knew I had to choose carefully. The safe path was obvious: finish my education, get my degree, and then pursue business opportunities with the security of a Harvard diploma behind me. But I could sense that the personal computer revolution was accelerating rapidly, and waiting even 2 more years might mean missing the most critical phase of industry development. After long discussions with my parents, Paul Allen, and trusted advisors, I made the decision to take a leave of absence from Harvard and move to Albuquerque to work with MITS full-time. This wasn't dropping out permanently. I was keeping the door open to return and complete my degree if our business venture didn't succeed. But in my heart I knew this was the beginning of a new chapter that would consume all my energy and attention. In 1975, Paul and I officially founded Microsoft, though we didn't initially use that name. Our original company was called Microsoft, reflecting our focus on microcomputer software. We were just 2 young programmers with big dreams and an unshakable belief that personal computers would eventually be as common as televisions or telephones in homes and offices around the world. Our early days in Albuquerque were challenging but exhilarating. We were working out of small offices, writing code for various microcomputer manufacturers, and learning the business side of the software industry through trial and error. Every day brought new technical challenges, new potential customers, and new opportunities to prove that software could be a profitable, sustainable business. One of our first major lessons was about the value of intellectual property in the software industry. We discovered that many computer enthusiasts were copying and sharing our basic interpreter without paying for licenses. This widespread piracy was threatening our ability to invest in developing improved versions and new products. I wrote an open letter to computer hobbyists, arguing that software development required significant investments of time and resources, and that creators deserved to be compensated for their work. This letter was controversial in a community that had traditionally shared software freely, but it established an important principle that would guide the entire industry's development. Software wasn't just a hobby or academic exercise, it was valuable intellectual property that could support professional development teams and continuous innovation. This principle became foundational to Microsoft's business model and the broader commercial software industry. As the personal computer market expanded beyond hobbyists to include small businesses and eventually larger organizations, we recognized that our opportunity was much bigger than we had initially imagined. Every new computer sold would need software, and the companies that could provide reliable, useful applications would benefit from this geometric growth in the installed base of personal computers. We began developing software for multiple computer platforms, recognizing that the hardware industry was still fragmented with many competing standards and architectures. Our strategy was to become the leading software provider across all major platforms, rather than betting exclusively on any single hardware manufacturer. This approach required significant technical expertise and business agility, but it positioned us to benefit from industry growth regardless of which hardware companies ultimately succeeded. The relationship with IBM changed everything for Microsoft and the entire personal computer industry. When IBM decided to enter the personal computer market in the late 1970s, they needed an operating system for their new machine. Through a series of fortunate circumstances and strategic decisions, they approached Microsoft about providing this critical software component. At the time, we didn't actually have an operating system to sell to IBM. But we recognized this as the opportunity of a lifetime. IBM's entry into personal computers would legitimize the entire market and create demand for compatible software on an unprecedented scale. We told IBM we could provide what they needed, then scrambled to acquire and adapt an existing operating system that could meet their requirements. We purchased an operating system called QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System, from Seattle Computer Products for $50,000, modified it extensively, and renamed it MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System. This became the foundation for IBM's personal computer and eventually for the majority of personal computers sold throughout the 1980s and beyond. The IBM deal was structured in a way that allowed Microsoft to retain ownership of MS-DOS and license it to other computer manufacturers. This proved to be one of the most important business decisions in technology history, as it enabled Microsoft to benefit from the growth of IBM-compatible computers while maintaining independence from any single hardware partner. As MS-DOS became the standard operating system for personal computers, Microsoft's position in the industry strengthened dramatically. We were no longer just another software company. We were the provider of the fundamental software layer that made personal computers usable. This gave us insights into user needs, technical requirements, and market trends that informed our development of additional software products. The success of MS-DOS taught me several crucial lessons about technology markets and business strategy. First, I learned that standards and compatibility are often more valuable than superior technology. MS-DOS wasn't necessarily the best operating system available, but it became successful because it was widely adopted and supported. Second, I discovered the power of platform strategies. By controlling the underlying software platform, we could influence the development of the entire ecosystem of applications and peripherals. But perhaps most importantly, the MS-DOS experience showed me that success in technology markets often depends on timing, positioning, and strategic partnerships as much as technical excellence. Our relationship with IBM gave us credibility and market access that would have taken years to develop independently. However, maintaining our independence while working with dominant partners required careful navigation of complex business relationships. As Microsoft grew rapidly throughout the early 1980s, we faced new challenges that tested our ability to scale operations while maintaining our innovative culture. We needed to hire talented programmers, establish development processes, and create organizational structures that could support much larger and more complex projects than our early work on programming languages and simple applications. Recruiting the best technical talent became a critical priority. We competed with established technology companies, research laboratories, and universities for the most promising computer science graduates and experienced programmers. Our advantage was the opportunity to work on cutting-edge projects that would directly impact millions of users. But we also needed to offer competitive compensation and create a work environment that attracted and retained exceptional people. The culture we built at Microsoft reflected my belief that software development was fundamentally an intellectual challenge that required creativity, analytical thinking, and intense focus. We encouraged debate and disagreement about technical approaches, believing that the best solutions emerged from rigorous evaluation of alternatives. This could make our meetings intense and confrontational, but it also ensured that our products were thoroughly tested and optimized before release. We also maintained extremely high standards for product quality and performance. Every piece of software we shipped reflected on Microsoft's reputation and our ability to win future business. This meant extensive testing, careful attention to user experience, and willingness to delay releases when necessary to achieve our quality standards. These practices sometimes frustrated partners and customers who wanted faster delivery, but they established Microsoft's reputation for reliable, professional software products. The transition from command-line operating systems like MS-DOS to graphical user interfaces represented another major inflection point in the personal computer industry. Apple's introduction of the Lisa and later the Macintosh computers demonstrated that ordinary users preferred intuitive, visual interfaces over text-based commands that required memorizing complex syntax. We recognized that graphical user interfaces would eventually become standard for personal computers, but we also understood that the transition would take time and require significant technological developments. Rather than abandoning MS-DOS immediately, we began developing Windows as a graphical layer that ran on top of our existing operating system, providing a migration path for users and software developers. The development of Windows was one of the most challenging projects in Microsoft's early history. We needed to create software that could run on the limited hardware available at the time while providing the rich, responsive user experience that people expected from graphical interfaces. This required innovations in memory management, device drivers, and application programming interfaces that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with existing technology. Early versions of Windows were not immediately successful. The hardware requirements were too demanding for most personal computers, the performance was sluggish, and many software developers were reluctant to invest in creating applications for a platform with uncertain market acceptance. Critics dismissed Windows as inferior to the Macintosh interface and questioned whether Microsoft had the expertise to create compelling graphical software. But we persisted because we believed that graphical user interfaces represented the future of personal computing. Each new version of Windows incorporated improvements based on user feedback, advances in hardware capabilities, and our growing understanding of interface design principles. We also invested heavily in encouraging software developers to create Windows applications, recognizing that platform success depended on having compelling applications that took advantage of graphical capabilities. The breakthrough came with Windows 3.0, released in 1990. By this time, personal computer hardware had advanced sufficiently to support graphical interfaces effectively. We had refined the user experience based on years of feedback, and a critical mass of applications was available. Windows 3.0 became one of the most successful software products in history, selling millions of copies and establishing graphical interfaces as the standard for personal computers. The success of Windows 3.0 transformed Microsoft from a successful software company into the dominant platform provider for personal computers. This brought enormous opportunities, but also new responsibilities and challenges. We were no longer just competing with other software companies. We were shaping the technological foundation that thousands of other companies depended on for their own products and services. Managing this platform responsibility required balancing the needs of different constituencies, individual users, corporate customers, software developers, and hardware manufacturers. Decisions we made about Windows features, interfaces, and technical specifications could affect entire industries and millions of people. This influence was exciting but also humbling, as I realized the broader impact our work was having on society and the economy. The rapid growth of Microsoft throughout the 1980s and early 1990s also created personal challenges that tested my leadership abilities and forced me to evolve beyond my original role as a programmer and technical visionary. As the company grew to thousands of employees and billions in revenue, I needed to develop skills in strategic planning, organizational management, and external communications that were very different from my technical background. Learning to delegate effectively was particularly difficult for me. In Microsoft's early days, I had been personally involved in reviewing and approving every major technical decision and many minor ones. As the company scaled, this level of direct involvement became impossible and counterproductive. I had to learn to trust other people's judgment, establish clear decision-making processes, and create systems that maintained quality and consistency without requiring my personal oversight of every detail. The most fundamental principle is the importance of maintaining intense curiosity about how things work and why problems persist despite previous efforts to solve them. Whether you're trying to improve computer performance or reduce child mortality, success depends on understanding root causes rather than just addressing symptoms. This requires asking difficult questions, challenging conventional wisdom, and being willing to admit when your initial assumptions were wrong. Throughout my career, some of my most important breakthroughs came from recognizing that problems I thought I understood were actually more complex than I had initially realized. The transition from command line interfaces to graphical user interfaces required fundamentally rethinking how people interacted with computers. Addressing global health challenges required understanding not just medical science but also economics, politics, and cultural factors that influenced health outcomes. This curiosity must be coupled with intellectual honesty about what you do and don't know. One of the most dangerous mistakes in any field is assuming that success in one area automatically translates to expertise in others. When I transitioned from technology to philanthropy, I had to accept that my business experience provided valuable skills but didn't substitute for deep knowledge about global health, education, or development challenges. The willingness to learn from experts, acknowledge mistakes, and adjust strategies based on new evidence is essential for anyone trying to solve complex problems. This intellectual humility doesn't mean lacking confidence or vision. It means maintaining the flexibility to evolve your approach as you gain new insights and encounter unexpected obstacles. Another crucial principle is the importance of setting ambitious goals while maintaining realistic expectations about timelines and implementation challenges. Throughout my career, I've found that achieving breakthrough results requires setting targets that seem impossibly difficult from current baselines. The vision of putting a computer in every home seemed absurd in 1975, just as the goal of eradicating polio seemed unrealistic when hundreds of thousands of children were being paralyzed by the disease every year. But ambitious goals must be balanced with realistic understanding of what it takes to achieve them. Breakthrough innovations don't happen overnight. They result from sustained effort over many years, systematic investigation of multiple approaches, and willingness to persist through inevitable setbacks and failures. The key is maintaining long-term commitment to ambitious outcomes while being flexible about the specific strategies and timelines for achieving them. The importance of building strong teams and partnerships cannot be overstated. Every significant achievement in my career has been the result of collaboration with exceptionally talented people who brought complementary skills, perspectives, and commitment to shared objectives. Whether building Microsoft or working on global health initiatives, success has depended on attracting people who are smarter than me in their areas of expertise and creating environments where they can do their best work. Building effective teams requires more than just recruiting talented individuals. It demands creating cultures that encourage innovation, honest communication, and shared accountability for results. This means establishing clear goals and performance standards, while also providing the autonomy and resources people need to pursue creative solutions. It means celebrating both individual contributions and collective achievements while learning from failures without assigning blame. Partnerships with external organizations add another layer of complexity, but also multiply the resources and capabilities available for addressing large-scale challenges. Whether working with hardware manufacturers to expand the PC market or collaborating with international organizations to deliver vaccines, success depends on aligning incentives, sharing risks and rewards fairly, and maintaining trust even when conflicts arise. One of the most important lessons I've learned is that sustainable solutions to complex problems must create value for all stakeholders, not just the intended beneficiaries. This might seem obvious in business contexts, where products succeed only if customers are willing to pay for them. But it's equally important in philanthropic work, where interventions must be adopted and maintained by people and organizations with their own priorities and constraints. The most successful global health initiatives have been those that strengthened existing health systems rather than creating parallel delivery mechanisms that competed with local institutions. The most effective education reforms have been those that supported teachers and administrators rather than imposing external requirements that ignored local conditions and community preferences. This systems thinking requires understanding not just the immediate problem you're trying to solve, but also the broader context in which solutions must be implemented and sustained. It means designing interventions that work within existing constraints, while gradually building capacity for more ambitious improvements over time. The role of measurement and data in driving continuous improvement is another principle that applies across all domains of problem solving. You cannot improve what you cannot measure, and you cannot scale interventions without clear evidence of their effectiveness under different conditions. This requires establishing baseline conditions, defining success metrics that capture what you're actually trying to achieve, and collecting data systematically over time to track progress and identify areas for improvement. But measurement must be balanced with recognition that the most important outcomes are often difficult to quantify and may not be visible for many years. The full impact of education improvements may not be apparent until students complete their schooling and enter the workforce. The economic benefits of health interventions may compound over decades as healthier populations become more productive and prosperous. The challenge is maintaining focus on long-term outcomes while using shorter-term indicators to guide course corrections and maintain momentum. This requires developing measurement systems that capture both immediate outputs and intermediate outcomes that predict longer-term impact. Perhaps the most difficult lesson I've learned is the importance of accepting that even the most well-designed and well-implemented interventions will not succeed in every context or for every individual. Complex social problems exist because they are genuinely difficult to solve, not because previous efforts lacked good intentions or adequate resources. This means that failure is an inevitable part of any ambitious effort to create positive change. The key is failing intelligently, taking calculated risks, learning from unsuccessful approaches, and using those insights to improve future efforts. It also means maintaining perspective about partial success and recognizing that meaningful progress is valuable even when it falls short of ultimate objectives. The personal costs of pursuing ambitious goals must also be acknowledged and managed carefully. Building Microsoft required an intensity of focus and commitment that left little time for other aspects of life during crucial periods of company development. Transitioning to philanthropic work required learning entirely new fields of expertise while managing the ongoing responsibilities that came with wealth and public attention. Maintaining physical health, mental well-being, and personal relationships while pursuing demanding professional objectives requires intentional effort and sometimes difficult choices about priorities and time allocation. The most sustainable approaches to ambitious goals are those that can be maintained over many years without causing burnout or damaging the relationships and experiences that provide meaning and joy beyond professional achievement. For young people who are beginning their careers and considering how they want to contribute to the world, I want to emphasize that there are many different paths to creating positive impact. Not everyone needs to start a technology company or devote their entire career to philanthropy. The world needs talented, committed people working in all sectors and at all levels to address the challenges we face as a global community. The most important thing is to find work that engages your particular talents and interests while also contributing to outcomes that matter to you. This might mean joining an existing organization that is working on problems you care about, starting your own venture to address unmet needs, or using your professional skills to support causes that align with your values. What matters most is approaching whatever work you choose with the same principles that drive effective problem solving in any context: maintaining curiosity, setting ambitious goals, building strong partnerships, measuring results, learning from failures, and persisting through inevitable setbacks. These principles apply whether you're developing new technologies, improving educational outcomes, addressing health challenges, or working on any other problem that affects human welfare. I also want to emphasize the importance of maintaining optimism about the possibility of solving even the most complex global challenges. When I look at the progress that has been achieved during my lifetime, the reduction in extreme poverty, the improvements in child survival, the advances in technology that have expanded opportunities for education and economic participation, I am convinced that continued progress is possible if we maintain focus on evidence-based solutions and long-term commitment to shared objectives. This optimism isn't naive or based on wishful thinking. It's grounded in evidence about what has been achieved when human creativity, resources, and determination are applied systematically to specific problems. The same innovation and problem-solving capabilities that created the technologies we use every day can be applied to challenges like climate change, global health, and educational equity with equally transformative results. But realizing this potential requires each of us to take responsibility for contributing to solutions, rather than just hoping that someone else will address the problems we care about. It requires engaging with complexity rather than seeking simple answers to difficult questions. And it requires maintaining long-term commitment even when progress seems slow or obstacles appear insurmountable. The journey from curious teenager in Seattle to technology entrepreneur to global philanthropist has taught me that the most meaningful achievements are those that expand opportunities for other people to realize their own potential. The technologies we developed at Microsoft were valuable primarily because they enabled millions of people to be more productive, creative, and connected. The health and education initiatives we support through our foundation are important because they help children grow up healthy and educated so they can contribute their own talents to building a better world. This is ultimately what success means to me, not just personal achievement or recognition, but the knowledge that my efforts have helped create conditions where other people can pursue their own dreams and make their own contributions to human progress. Whether through technology that empowers individuals or philanthropy that addresses systemic barriers to opportunity, the goal is always to expand what's possible for others. Looking toward the future, I remain excited about the potential for continued innovation to address the challenges facing humanity. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, clean energy, and other emerging technologies will create new possibilities for solving problems that seem intractable today. But realizing this potential will require the same principles that have guided effective innovation throughout history: curiosity, persistence, collaboration, and commitment to outcomes that benefit all of humanity. The young people beginning their careers today will have opportunities to contribute to solutions that my generation could barely imagine. They will also face challenges that require new approaches, new partnerships, and new ways of thinking about old problems. But they will have access to tools, knowledge, and global connections that provide unprecedented capabilities for creating positive change. My advice to them is simple: find problems that engage your passion and talents, approach them with intellectual rigor and emotional commitment, build partnerships with people who share your objectives, and maintain faith that sustained effort can achieve results that seem impossible from today's perspective. The world needs their energy, creativity, and dedication to continue the progress that each generation must make if we are to leave our children and grandchildren a better world than the one we inherited. This is my story, but it's also an invitation for others to write their own stories of innovation, impact, and service to humanity. The challenges are real, the opportunities are enormous, and the potential for progress depends on all of us choosing to engage with the problems that matter most. The future is not predetermined. It will be shaped by the choices we make and the actions we take starting today.